welcome to the K-Fic Cafe. This is your hosts, JT.
And Jay.
Just to start off, we were going to do some quick shout-outs to some peoples.
Shout out to Got No Jams 0613 who reached out to us via the website on One Shots. We hope that our input was helpful and you're doing well with your stories.
And also a shout-out to Unlucky_13, and this is 13 as XIII. We thank you for commenting on our YouTube and also just reaching out to us privately and just chatting about whatever there is. If you're new to this, you can check out our website, which is kficcafe.wixsite.com/kfic-cafe. It will be in the description below. Don't worry about it. You can also find our podcasts there. We have a podcast section. You can find it, aside from our website, you can find it on Apple Podcast, Anchor, Spotify, just to name a few. We'll include a full list in our description and later at the end of the video. All right. Now, let's talk about the quotes of the day. Honestly, we were torn between two quotes, but both were from the same people, and we think both could provide some form of truth and some advice. So the first one is, as with all other aspects of fiction, the key to writing good dialogue is honesty, by Stephen King, author of It, The Shining, and all those other good horror films that you're seeing now today. So I was about to say Dr. Sleep. I'm pretty sure he wrote that one too. Yeah, honesty, as Stephen King says it, is a very key thing that helps make your writing feel genuine. Because with most writers, to write something of substantial quality and accuracy, being honest about the way you're writing it is a very good way to create genuine dialogue, natural flowing dialogue. The other one kind of builds off of that. Writing good dialogue is art as well as craft, Stephen King. And it's just, again, it's kind of straightforward. Just being able to write quality dialogue is art. It's beautiful when it looks nice. So-and-so says this, so-and-so says this while doing something else. There's no particularly correct way to do it, but nonetheless, it's a skill. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want on top of that, Jay?
So I guess we should define what dialogue is.
That's a good idea. So stripping it down to the core and to the very basics, we're going to just start with what exactly is dialogue, right? So dialogue, obviously, is when characters talk in narrative writing. And so when you write, we use quotation marks and we use dialogue tags to let you, the audience, the readers, know when a certain character is speaking. So normally there are two ways to go about that. There are direct quotes and there's indirect quotes. And so direct quotes tells exactly what the speaker said, right? And you have the quotation marks at the end of the quote. And so it can be like, begin quotations, come check out my Wattpad bio, comma, end quotations, said JT. It would be nice if you could, but like that would be what a direct quote is. With quotation marks, it indicates what the speaker is saying. But there are also indirect quotes, which essentially paraphrases the speaker's words. So no quotation marks are used, and it would probably be something like, JT said to come check out his Wattpad bio. Although that is generally what I said, it isn't what I said word for word, but it kind of just summarizes it or with different words, or it just shortens it or changes it in some way. It's not the exact way they said it. So aside from that, maybe I'm using the term dialogue tags, but it's possible you guys don't know what that is. Dialogue tags are normally included with direct quotes. They tell who is speaking or who's providing that action, and that is not included in the quotation marks. So begin quotation marks, come check out my Wattpad bio, comma, and parentheses, said, that would be the dialogue tag, said JT, the speaker, which would be me. In that sentence, I said would be that dialogue tag. And so me as speaker and the action would be the dialogue tag. And so these dialogue tags can appear anywhere in the sentence. It can appear at the beginning. JT said, I'm just going to use said as the example. So JT said, comma, begin parentheses, blah, 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 end parentheses. And there's a period inside the parentheses too, just for grammatical
correctness.
Correctness.
If that's a word, I think.
You can also find dialogue tags at the end of a sentence, which is what I've been doing with the first few examples. Come check out my Wattpad bio, comma, end quotations, JT said, or said JT, period. But also, I don't see this a lot in a lot of writings, but dialogue tags can also appear in the middle of sentences. So how would I say that with my, let me change it up a bit. If the quote is, today we are going to talk about dialogue, then if we were to put a dialogue tag in the middle, it would be begin, why do I say parentheses? Good Lord.
You've been saying that a lot. It's good.
Begin quotation marks, today, comma, end quotations, JT said, or said JT. The way it sounds natural depends strictly on how the writer presents it. So I'm just offering both of them as an option. So begin quotation marks, today, comma, end quotations, JT said, or said JT, comma, begin quotation marks, again, we are going to talk about dialogue, period, end quotation marks. So you can kind of indicate who is speaking and how they're saying it by including them at the beginning, in the middle, at the end. And sometimes it's just a style preference on the writer. I particularly enjoy putting dialogue tags in the middle of sentences because it's like taking a breather from what they're saying in your head. Just a personal preference for me. And you guys can experiment with that on your own when you write as well. And you can reach out to us and talk to us about further questions that you have through our email, the K-Fic Cafe at gmail.com. And everything, I challenge someone, just for fun. I just challenge someone, take a section of our podcast, write it out as dialogue, and send it to us, just for kicks. It makes great practice.
It does, though. It does.
Practice makes perfect. Just doing random exercises to help you with a specific task is very good. Dialogue is a particularly hard aspect of writing, and a lot of people have issues, and not really issues, but like the way they write dialogue is not as descriptive, because there's so many different types of dialogue tags. Sometimes you don't actually need a dialogue tag. It's just you don't. Sorry. Sometimes you don't really need dialogue tags. Sometimes the indication of who is speaking can be replaced by the speaker doing a physical action. So today, John, how do I do this? Normally it would be with between two complete sentences in quotations. So today we are talking about dialogue. JT fumbled with his pencil. I'm not really good at making stuff up on the spot. Do you have a good example, Jay?
Yeah, I actually do. It's actually from a story I've recently been reading from school. Okay. So it's a interaction between a exiled princess and a Valkyrie who is like crazy in the head. All right. The princess name is Leah. The Valkyrie name is Sia. It's easy to get those confused, but it goes. So prior to this quote, Leah has just been told that she is going to have to marry the devil's son.
Spoilers.
Y'all know what story it is, so it's all good. But she finds that out. And so Leah asks, why do I have to marry his son? And so when Sia speaks, it goes, Because, comma, quotations, Theo walked to the other side of the room looking outside the window, comma again, quotations, is what you need to do to restore your throne, or something like that. I think, is that an example, Sam?
Yeah, so it depends. The period after the action or the dialogue tag bit depends on what is being said. If it's happening in the middle of like a sentence, then you're probably going to need commas. There's a lot of grammatical things that are really weird with this. If you need help, reach out to us. We can help you figure it out. Earlier, I think you demonstrated a really good example of direct quotes and indirect quotes, because the first one was an indirect quote when you talked about Leo said that she didn't want to marry the devil's son, which probably isn't the exact thing she said word for word. But then when we talk about Sia, Jay goes on and literally tells you begin quotations, blah 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 blah, in quotations. She walked to the other side of the room, and then quotation quotation. And so yeah, good example, bro.
Thank you.
hmm And it's very important that we talk about that. It's you don't have to say, so and so said this, so and so said that, so and so said it in this manner, so and so said it in that manner. The dialogue tags could also be so and so, like blah 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 explained the main character, or it could be like, what are you doing? Questioned so and so. uh, Roar, yell. There's a lot of dialogue tags out there that you could use. Um, and sometimes, if you're creative enough, you can, in a way, create your own dialogue tag so it sounds very unique. And the dialogue tag helps um, convey the way they sound, the way they feel. Um, and like you can also add details after that, after you put in the dialogue tag and who is saying it, but like but it adds detail. It adds more color to the way you're writing, so your readers can almost hear it in their heads or picture it more vividly. um, and it's really good if you want your readers to kind of live it, like they can hear it in their head, like they can imagine the character just sitting right there and they're saying it and they can hear it in their head. And that's when I think that's when you know you've got it pretty solid.
Hmm. All right. Next, we could go over communication.
Oh yeah, so big thing that we like, I talked about how like sometimes you don't need dialogue tags, you can replace them with actions, right?
Hmm.
So as a neuroscience major, psychology, um, it's important, and I think not a lot of people know this, and I think it's very important that writers especially know this, because I think one of the most important parts of dialogue isn't specifically what is said. And it's a very low percentage of communication relies very little on what is being said. It provides context, but it isn't a big thing. I believe it was communication is 7% verbal, 55% body language, and 38% tone of voice. So, in other words, actions do speak louder than words. And that isn't to say you should always replace your dialogue tags with actions, but the words specifically shouldn't be what conveys information to anyone. Because imagine you're watching, I don't know, try, I guess the best way to like see it is find a movie that you like and then watch it mute, and then watch the characters interact with each other. You see, when you see someone angry, maybe they lunge, they move really close to the other person, they have a very smug expression on their face, or they're just really sour, faces all crinkled up, or something like that. Just, oh wow, I just provide a lot of details. These are things that you should include with the dialogue, so it adds even more flavor. You can picture it more vividly. Um, I mean, there's so many ways to do it. Just body language tells you so much things. There's an awesome TV show that I'm watching right now called Lie to Me, about a scientist who reads body language for a living, and he helps cops and the FBI and the government figure out who is telling the lie in order to find like where's the serial killer or the terrorist or the bomber, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just these little details that can say a lot about the character as they're saying something. Or if they're not saying anything, it can still convey information. Just imagine a time when you're like out in public and you see another person. I'm sure you've seen like a couple. If you look at a couple, imagine how they are interacting with one another. If you see like they're a bit withdrawn from one another, maybe they had an argument or something like that. Just being able to read or show body language or like the way, because we all do things when we talk. I mean, there's a lot that gets conveyed through besides words. Words, I mean, although dialogue is words, but you should also pair them with actions because that is also what helps convey certain emotions or certain moods or concepts, ideals. I don't know, but like communication is just, it's not just verbal. There's body language, and then there's the tone of voice, which is how do they say those words. All right. I've been talking for a lot. You go, Jay.
All right. And one thing about dialogue is usually or is recommended that you use dialogue to reveal emotions through words and not adverbs.
Oh yeah.
In case you guys, probably fresh out of high school or it's been a while since you heard the now adverb. But an adverb is basically a word or a phrase that modifies or qualifies an adjective, verb, or other adverb or a word group. So,
So
it
like
has been a
quickly.
while.
So like
Yes.
quickly,
Slippery.
rapidly.
Spoopily. That's
Yeah.
not a word.
Normally adverbs end with an ly. That's a very good
Hmm.
way to identify them. But quickly, timely, those are ways to describe things.
Hmm.
Personally, use them sparingly because it kind of hurts my head after you see so many ly words after a while.
Hmm.
And we'll talk about this in a second, but just like try to use adverbs are great for describing dialogue tags, but like know how to change the adverbs with something else.
Like, for instance, like you mentioned quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so say in a sentence in a story, you could say that the main character moved quickly towards the door, or you could say the main character made haste to the door.
Mm-hmm.
They both mean the same thing, but with taking that quickly out, you eliminate simple words. Like
Mm-hmm.
it feel like to me, it feel like you add more flavor to what you're saying because it like I see your intellect. I'm feeling you. I'm feeling the sparks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not just also adverbs. A very common one, and I am falling victim to this because I keep catching myself doing it, and I'm like, there's got to be a different way to do it. Suddenly is a very very common one. All of a sudden, this happened. Suddenly, out of the blue, blah 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 blah. And look at that. I just kind of just spouted out some other like alternatives. All of a sudden, out of the blue. Out of the blue is not as common as the previous two, but like you should try to find a different way to say suddenly, or try to or use it just as little as you can, because it kind of, in a way, adverbs is cheating in the loosest way possible, because it is so easy to stick an ly adverb at the end of at the end of an action, because quickly, suddenly, what else is there? Slowly,
Mm.
silently, loudly. I mean, like you can just take a word. If you can stick an ly at the end, you have an adverb descriptor right there. Um, but just like cut down on it. Find a way to say it without using an adverb. That's also a fun challenge. Um, so just try to find. You should try to, like, adverbs are good at describing, but like you should also try to find a way to describe your dialogue tags with other words, with other descriptors.
And one thing that I found actually helped me was I downloaded a dictionary app on my phone because, since we're quarantined, we can't go to the library anymore. And when I have a word, like JT mentioned, I also suffer from using simple words. And I feel like when you use too many simple words, I feel like you're belittling your reader. Like you think they can't keep up with what you're writing. So recently, as I've been writing my stories and everything, I've been looking towards a dictionary to find synonyms. And I think there's a actual book for that. Is that a thesaurus or something like that? Thesaurus, huh?
Oh, the source.
Thesaurus. Yeah.
I'm sure it's
You
pronounced differently from region to region.
but you could also utilize that to help you find
Mhm.
synonyms, antonyms, and kind of boost up the I'm going to keep saying this, boost up the
Diversity.
flavor. Yeah,
Diversity,
diversity.
probably.
I'm a little hungry, so I keep saying flavor.
You'll get some snacks,
So
man.
that helps.
Yeah,
They're all the way in the kitchen.
I know I'm a bit late in saying this, but we will talk about like how to perceive your readers or the audience as you write, because yeah, Jay is right. You should not belittle your readers because they're just like you and me. We are writing, we're reading, we're kind of just we're all smart individuals, and sometimes you have to learn how to assume that the readers are at your level as well, and that's kind of hard thing to do. Um, Especially with internet, it's so easy. You can just look up definition of this word or this word synonyms, and I use this a lot as well. Just like if I feel like I've been using the same word way too many times in like the same page, then I will use a thesaurus, try to change it out, try to find the right word that has the right meaning or connotation. If you don't know what a connotation is, it's kind of like a definition, where a definition defines the word, but a connotation is the feeling that a word gives, which is kind of like the next level of definition. And so after you find that right word that you're like said, it's a very simple word. But what's another way of saying said? Yell. That's like projecting it, or whispering, mumbling, murmuring. Those are, you say it a lot quieter. And it's just those words that adds the descriptor of how are they saying it, and it just becomes a lot more descriptive and more. I don't know. I go on a roll sometimes, and then I just can't figure out the last word to end the freaking thing.
It happens, bro. It happens. But with you want to take time to try to find it, or
It's fine. We can keep going.
all right. So also another thing with dialogue tags is sometimes I see that people they try to stretch the tag. Like some people would say someone attempted to say, but they were you could say that somebody's hand was covering their mouth or something like that. But instead you could say he sound muffled or that person sound muffled as a result of da da da. But you don't want to extend the dialogue tag because then the reader would they'll kind of lose their focus with what they're reading, and they're like, they did what? Then they got to go back and read it again. So you all
Mhm.
now don't use simple words, but sometimes it is okay to simplify a phrase to keep it shorter. I know some of you
Mhm.
guys had to go to the 1,500 word mark, sometimes 3,000 word mark. But like it varies person to person. Don't be afraid of it. Just be aware
Mhm.
exactly of what you're doing.
Mhm. And the thing about dialogue is that it's kind of a double-edged sword. It is either going to make your writing a lot better, or it's going to make it pretty. It's going to make the quality go down. Um, there is this, I guess, descriptive and dialogue. We call it marshmallow dialogue, and it's for this reason. Um, Dialogue that is very crisp and filled with tension is very engaging, right? And when people read it, you have confidence in a way of the writer's ability, right? But when that dialogue is very, um, what is it? It's it's either like sodden or undistinguished. I'm not really sure how to how to say it, but like it has the complete opposite effect. And we call it marshmallow dialogue. Um, really good dialogue is compressed, all right. And on the other hand, marshmallow dialogue is very puffy, right? And good dialogue has conflict, but marshmallow dialogue is overly sweet, and it's that kind of like sickening kind of sweetness. Um, Good dialogue makes each character sounds unique to one another, which I see a lot of other writers struggling with, giving each character their own voice. And marshmallow dialogue is just kind of a mixture of all of them in one go, and that's not very good because then it's hard to tell who is saying what. This is their personality, and this is the way they say it. Um, Another way you can think of it is if you text friends or you DM friends, the way they write their texts back differ from person to person. Like I capitalize the first letter of all my sentences. A lot of people don't like to capitalize at all when they text. People like to use abbreviations. I try to use them sparingly. Every person has a unique voice, a unique dialogue, I guess you could say, from each person to person. The way Jay talks and the way I talk is going to be very different.
Very different. Very. Now, one thing that we often see on Wattpad when it comes to dialogue, there seems to be, I would say, two kinds. There are those who writes their dialogue in a way that you see in normal stories, and then we also see people who are trying to incorporate screenwriting type of dialogue as if their
Mm-hmm.
book is a show or a play. Now, with normal writing, I feel like it's easier to convey actions, convey inner thoughts, kind of like get stories or get a character's development pushing through. And when you're writing stories as a screenwriter, you basically have to hope, like you basically have to pray, get on your knees and pray that the person is visualizing this as a episode. Because I feel like with the screenwriting, it's more fast paced. Like you don't have time to put dialogue tags. Like you can't say they interrupted. Instead, you have to put maybe a dash before a word is finished prior to. And honestly, I've seen one person do it pretty well, but any other time, I feel like some people go to it because they are afraid of dialogue tags.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're worried that they're going to make something too wordy or something like that.
I agree with you on that, definitely. And I also understand where those writers are coming from because just writing it in the way like a script is formatted, so and so colon says this, so and so colon says this. It's very easy. But the thing is, because it's so easy, sometimes it moves away too fast. And it doesn't keep up with the pacing that you probably want with the plot or the tension of the scene. And it just goes a little too fast. With dialogue, you can with like dialogue tags, you can control the speed of how the scene is moving. In the art of the con, I had to figure out how to make things feel like they're rushing really fast, like it's adrenaline paced. I'm not sure if I pulled it off really well, but there's a part where the main character is on the run. He's kind of alone at that time, and he's just trying to escape the his pursuers. And so with that, I have moments where he is hiding, and I try to elongate those moments because I'm sure everybody has experienced those moments where when you're hiding or you're waiting for something, and it feels like only 5 minutes go by, but it feels like eternity has just passed. Or you're doing something and you're having so much fun, or all that adrenaline is pumping, and then immediately 10 minutes go by in like the span of 5 seconds or something. And so it's just using your ability to describe or use dialogue tags to make things feel faster or make things feel slower. And that is one of the things that scripts lose their it's a disadvantage that they have. And again, I'm going to say I understand why people would write like that because it's easy. It makes sense. So and so says this, so and so says that. The thing about the way scripts are written, the reason why it doesn't have as much like descriptors on there, like so and so says it angrily. I mean, sometimes it will say that, but like for the most part, they don't tell you how it. They won't normally say so and so is going to be doing this while they do while they speak, because for these are either from like movies or these are for TV shows, just for example. So it's the reason they tell you what the character is going to say, but when the actors sit down for their readings and they go over and they read through it, they have to start processing. Okay, how is my character going to be saying this? Is my character the type of person who gets very angry easily? Is the tension gonna rise super fast for this character? Or is it gonna be something, are they gonna say it like very quietly because the character is a very shy individual? A lot of it is left up to the reader's imagination, because for the actors, they have to come up with the way they're gonna say it. And that's why you have a lot of ad-libbed portions inside movies or TV shows that you don't really know about. I mean, like I find some from like YouTube, random YouTube videos. Like, let's see, what was there? Thor Ragnarok. There was a scene where he meets Hulk on the Colosseum battle place, and when he sees him, he looks. I forgot this scene. It's been a while, but it's just like he's a friend from work. That was an ad lib, but it feels so much like Thor's character because he's just like, "Hey, look at that! I know this guy," but he doesn't say, "Oh, I know him. We know each other." He says, "Oh, he's a friend from work," and it's just that ad lib contributes and accentuates on this character's personality and how he's like, and that is because the actor is the one who interpret the character and just said something that their character would say. So with scripts, a lot of it is left up to the reader's imagination, which is not bad. But in a book, because it's not a script, you're telling the readers a story. You should not give them so much work, but dialogue tags do help add I guess they put the meat on the bone, and they add this richness to it as well. Look at us, we're just using food-like descriptors to talk about and help get our point across.
Food is a language everybody speaks.
Mm-hmm. If you have trouble writing dialogue, I mean, feel free to come to us and talk about it, because dialogue is tricky. It is very hard to, master. It's just, you'll have a tough time figuring it all out, right? So feel free to reach out to us on the email. We'll include it in the description or at the end of the video.
One thing I do want to mention, not even recently, a few months back, I tried my hand at screenwriting, and trust me, it didn't end very well. But I watched the screenwriting for the show called Lucifer on Netflix. Really good show. Everybody should check it out. Please do. And after already seeing the show, I kind of already knew where, like, how each character would say this, each character would say that. So as I was reading the screenwrite version as inspiration, trying to come up with my new unique way to write, I was like, oh, okay. So if I didn't watch the show, I would have just thought all this was monotone. But having the characters' voices in my mind, you can obviously hear when someone is like yelling. Sometimes if Lucifer yells, maybe he yells with some rasp in his voice. So I feel like screenwriting, you definitely want to be careful with. I mean, if you got a good hand, you confident, go for it. I'm not here to discourage you. Do your thing.
Definitely. So there's this picture that I don't remember exactly how I stumbled across it, but it really helped me figure out different ways to write dialogue. So for the most part, let's see. These are written. The people who wrote these wrote them as dialogue, which I thought was very unique. I will put it up on the blog later, but I'll try my best to summarize what each of them are trying to say, and for your information for help. But this is mostly dialogue and style. Commas should be used instead of period at the during the dialogue of your story at the end, right before the end quotation mark, which unless the dialogue is followed with an action and not an action tag. So periods would be used if the character says something and then he does an action. So like blah 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 period and quotations. He took a deep breath before sitting back down into his seat. Um, but commas are appropriate if they are used for actions, if they are used in the middle of a sentence. So, however, comma, she added, shifting in her seat. I think it's a great idea that we should do this, blah, 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 blah. But you can, but periods should, but if it's like, so the comma should be used if there's an action that happens in the middle of a sentence. But if it's in between two separate sentences or statements, it can end. It can end with a period if an action is included. An end dash or hyphens, and two hyphens make up an end dash. So you can interrupt a sentence with an action using the end dashes, and the first end dash comes before the action. The first end dash comes as before the end parentheses and before the beginning parentheses of the second half of the sentence, and you can use that to interrupt your dialogue with just like split your sentence in two and fitting an action what the character is doing during that doing that particular scene. And there's other ways that they show how to do this, and it's difficult to explain this using words, verbal words. So I'll put this up on the blog for everybody else to read it, and I think it's a very good idea and a very good way to learn how to properly write grammar correctly and grammatically correct. Dialogue is very tricky.
Z. And then there's another aspect of dialogue that comes aside from, so me and JT, we both speak English. So when we write stories, a lot of times they're in English, but sometimes you will have characters in your story that actually don't speak English. For instance, in a pre-write for my project, I had it to where one of my main characters' parents didn't speak English, but instead spoke Korean. Now, I don't even study Korean on Duolingo for 2 months, so I'm not an expert. But one way that JT said that I could have done it, that I could do it, is maybe either insert some Korean words that are pretty common, like I do know how to say hey, hi, all that, or I could just italicize it, which actually would lead to me, it's a way to differentiate between the two languages. For as long as now this works well, there's only 2 languages spoken in the story, but if there's more than 2, I guess you could use bold. You can maybe underline. It's a pretty risky.
Yeah, I see those a lot, and personally, it just doesn't look right to me. It is a very hard thing to do, but it just doesn't look right. Mm-hmm. The thing about italicizing, I think it all depends on the style of the writer. Because for me, I write a lot of thoughts and italices, and I don't put quotation marks around a lot of them. If it's like a person is remembering a line another character said, I would put the quotation marks around those. But thoughts I generally represent with italics. So I think when you write, you just have to figure out for your style what looks right to me, because a lot of people use italics for other things. And a thing that you should do is don't tell your readers why this font is bold, or why it's underlined, or why it's italicized. I mean, you can, but you should only do it once. Don't keep saying this is the Korean translation, or this is the thoughts. You should be able to say it once, and the reader should be able to pick it up from there. Because I actually don't say these are thoughts, right? I don't tell my readers that this is in their head, but the way it looks, you can tell it's dialogue, but it doesn't look like normal dialogue with the quotation marks. It just, and you have to think for yourself, what could this possibly be? And so I kind of hint that they are thoughts early on, like, how is that, like, da 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 da, he thought. And so when I write things like that with like dialogue tags, I don't include the quotation marks with those, and that's just my personal style. It looks and it feels right to me.
And one way the diversity can be affected it can also be affected by which point of view that you're using. Now we talk about point of view later on, but I'm just going to say this very briefly. Depending on which character or what character is active at the moment can also change the dynamic of the dialogue. For instance, when I was doing research, I was trying to figure out how should I incorporate the fact that my character doesn't speak this second language. And someone put in a blog that it was an example. So let's give this person a name. I like names. Let's go with Leah. All right. So say that Leah is in a fantasy world of Narvadon or something like that. And as part of her quest, she goes to the land of the elves. Now, Leah does not speak Elvish, but when she gets there, we don't know that. So one way that you can incorporate this struggle for the character is to put like the elves spoke in a tongue that well, no, that's giving it away. That's really giving it away. We just talked about not doing that. Well, I guess.
So in my project, I do have like a language thing, but it's very, very brief.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the character, she doesn't understand the language of the land that she is in. And so initially what I do is when she meets the people who live there, aside from the one like who speaks her language, that I literally just type it up. Like I just throw it into Google Translate and I just, just like whatever pops up, I'll just use that as to translate it as what it's supposed to be. And I just kind of have my character act as like the intermediate between the two, using the language, like actually writing down the language and putting it up on there. So like the native will say blah 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 blah, and then the intermediate would talk to them, and then they would turn and speak in English or whatever language it is, and say, all right, they said this, which does become a hassle if in your kind of story, especially in like a idle story where you are probably going to be there is no intermediate, right? And so what happens is later I do kind of hint at like I create an effect where that main character learns the language, and then the native is like, oh, you speak our tongue now, that is wonderful. And it's just, you kind of already know off the top of your head, oh, she speaks this language now. You don't actually have to explicitly tell them that, but the readers are capable of assuming things. I understand where Jay is getting at with his story, because his story is a bit of an idle one, if it doesn't give away too much in a way.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, nervous. Just like the problem that I see a lot of people do is like right before they're about to speak in a different language, they quickly put in parentheses, bolds, underlined, italics, or whatever, and then they just say in Korean, and I think that destroys the flow of the story, and it just looks so weird. I mean, you have to find a way where you don't explicitly say that to the readers, and it has to feel natural. Maybe find a professional book by a professional author who has like a bilingual, trilingual-esque kind of thing in their stories, and maybe figure it out from there.
I'm guilty. I'm so guilty of that. I have done it in some of my early Wattpad days. I did that in like 4 of my stories. And looking back at it now, I was like, why did I do that? What possessed me to do that? But they're gone, away from the world, away from the light.
I mean, just personally, it's just a me thing. It just feels very. It doesn't feel right.
It feels like I'm telling you that I'm hungry and you're giving me a full plate of food instead of telling me to go fix it myself.
1 second, let me meditate on that. I guess you could say it's too much telling. I see a lot of writers on Wattpad that are just like, I'm telling you all my styles and this is the way I'm writing it so you understand what I'm doing. I think the fun part for some of the writers, for readers, is just to figure it out as you go along. There's some joy in that. Like if you pick up, like if you go to like Barnes and Nobles or a bookstore or something like that, and you pick up a book or a fiction book in particular, you pick one up, you don't have a little legend in the front of the book that says, "Hi, I'm gonna bold all my da 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 words, and I'm gonna italicize all my thoughts, blah 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 blah, etc." You don't see them do that. It's just you just go with it because I mean, like that's not the most important part. The most important part is I'm telling you the story, how I'm writing it. You may just have to try to figure it out on your own. And worst comes to worst, just use Google. Just go on the internet, search, ask. Maybe there's a writing form somewhere that actually has an answer to that question. Internet's honestly your best friend. Go for it.
That's it. That's it.
Wow. We definitely went over the time limit we set for ourselves, but that's fine.
I enjoyed it. I did.
There's so many different aspects that we really want to talk about because it is hard, and the only way to get around it is just by practicing it. Plots, character design, character development, how to create your world, all that. There's just so many things, and it's really hard. And the only way you can really get better at it is just trying it and having other people like us look at it for you, provide feedback, and just to give you a hand. I mean, we're at the end of our podcast now, and I think the biggest thing that we really want to emphasize about the K-Fic Cafe is we want to be here for you. One of the biggest things before Jay and I even began was we found that by ourselves, it's hard to ask ourselves the right questions to help us move along and keep writing in a way. You just need a fresh set of eyes, a fresh mind to take a look at your writing and say, have you thought about it this way? What if you did it this way? Because sometimes your inspiration or the answer to your problem, you can't find it on your own, but somebody else might ask that right question and provide feedback. I mean,
and JT has definitely done that for me a lot. With the first couple of drafts for my story, I would send it to him. I would ask him about it, and he'll ask me these questions. I'm like, wow, I didn't really think of that. Oh my, oh dear. I'm just waiting for the day he's like gonna snap on me like my English teacher and tell me to throw it all away. But I doubt he'll do that. He's a pretty nice guy.
It's
oh my
trash.
god. Oh my god.
And for me, I find a lot of it just like I learn a lot just from watching how other people write. Because although in America there's like a set way we are taught to write, the way we write our stories, our fiction is going to be different. I do proofreadings for Unlucky underscore 13, and that's 13 as XIII. And I do proofreading and / editing for Jay and K-Popper underscore writer 17. And it's just I don't know how to explain it. Jay and I live in the South, and Unlucky 13 lives much further north. And after like looking at our styles, like Jay and I, we both have very, very similar styles of writing. And that might be because we live in the same region, the way we talk, the way we think might be similar, but up there, the way they talk is much different. I was editing a dialogue for him, and I'm saying, I don't think anyone says that. And he says, really? A lot of people up here say it a lot. And I'm like, oh, okay. It didn't really occur to me. And I think that's kind of draws a big loop back to the quote that we talked about earlier, how honesty is kind of like the core of any good writing in general. I guess the best advice I can end with this podcast is be natural with your dialogue. Make it sound as natural as possible, because then it makes sense. Other readers can go, I can definitely see this as well. I can see this. I can hear it. It sounds like something somebody else would say. And then it becomes relatable, and then they identify with that character. And we'll get to that in a future episode when we talk about character development or character design. but like, honestly, the best way that you can get better is just by doing it. I don't know. Last year I was at a camp. It was an English camp in Taiwan, and I was one of the teachers that I had, and when I say teachers, I mean like me, 18-year-old, I'm literally in front of a class of kids for a whole week, and I'm teaching them English, and my Chinese is not very good. Um, and we had to create a play based around a concept, and this is a play that we have to perform every single day of the week. Not like the same play for 5 days of the school week, but like a different one every single day. So we had to create our own. We didn't really have to create our own script, but like the organization that we were with gave us kind of like a rough draft, an outline of like a rough script of what they would like us to say. But to me, it sounded really weird because the flow felt very forced, and that lacked that naturalness to it. So me and my team, we sat down and we went over, and it's just like, we understand the predicament that these characters are in, but like, how would you say it? And then we know this event is going to lead to this event, that's going to lead to this event, so-and-so is going to do this, and we just kind of improv'd it. And when we presented it at the end of our boot camp, we were praised by the coach, I guess you could say, for the most naturalness. Because just like we were talking earlier about scripts, we have a lot of free reign of how you would want to present it. And I think like rewording from a script is probably nice too, because the more natural it feels, the more relatable it feels. And then that kind of caters to your audience and makes them feel more, included. Makes them feel like I'm part of this in a way because I can relate to this way of talking, Yeah. Is that it?
Yeah, that is actually it.
Talking for so long.
Every time you said "be natural" or anything with natural in it, I thought about that Red Velvet song.
Which one?
The song "Be Natural."
Oh, dang!
It was before Yeri came, so
yeah. I think that's it for dialogues this week. You can find more information about us on our website, kficcafe.wixsite.com/kfic-cafe. All of this information you'll find below, but we're just going to say it anyway. You can reach out to us on Instagram, on our website, and our email. Our Instagram is K-Fic Cafe. Our email is thekficcafe@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us on Wattpad. For me, JT, that would be kofpoponce.
And for me, Jay, it'd be kpopper_writer17.
Yeah, and you can also try reaching out to us through YouTube, although we're probably not going to be as responsive on there, but we will see your comments and what you say on there. In terms of podcasts, you can find these podcasts on our YouTube, which we do manually. You can find it on Anchor, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Breaker, RadioPublic, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts, I think. Our platform is starting to expand a lot more now. If you're watching this on our YouTube, or I don't know, whatever platform you're using, please drop a like, please comment, subscribe. Of course, we're saying this at the very end because we think the very most important thing is that you are listening, and we hope that you can learn something from what we are discussing here. And for the most part, I think that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well then.
Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah. All right.
I see that right there.
All right then. That being said, this is the K-Fic Cafe, and your hosts, JT and Jay, are signing off now. Thanks for listening.
Adios.
Bye.